Media fact checker. Boating accident off Tasmania's northwest coast kills 3 rescued after capsizing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 people, 3 adults, ages 27, 33, and 35, and a 6-year-old child were on a fishing trip from Montague boat ramp near Smithton around 5:30 p.m. Saturday. The vessel capsized around 9 p.m. Saturday, throwing all 4 occupants into the water off Tasmania's northwest coast, Robbins Passage Stony Point area. 3 survivors, 27-year-old woman, 33-year-old man, and 6-year-old child, were found alive floating near Big Stony Island and rescued about 1 p.m. Sunday. The missing 35-year-old man's body was found on Monday on the eastern side of Robbins Island. All 3 rescued survivors were wearing life jackets and taken to Northwest Regional Hospital for observation. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 says the search was continuing for the missing man as of Sunday afternoon, but Articles 2 and 3 report his body was found on Monday. Article 1 states the 3 rescued were found at Robbins Passage, while Articles 2 and 3 specify Big Stony Island, north of Robbins Island. Article 3's Inspector Maingay says the 35-year-old did not have a life jacket on during the critical period, but Article 1 initially reports all 3 rescued were wearing life jackets, implying ambiguity. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Severe flash flooding and dam failure risks in Hawaii's northern Oahu and Maui due to extreme rainfall. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Thousands of residents, over 4,000 to 5,500, were ordered to evacuate in northern Oahu, including Waialua and Halewa, due to flooding and dam risks. The Wahiawa Dam on Oahu, built in 1903, is at risk of imminent failure with water actively running over its spillway at 1,500 gallons per second, reported by Guardian and ABC. Emergency sirens and leave now evacuation orders were issued for areas downstream of the Wahiawa Dam on Friday morning, April 12, 2024. A shelter at Waialua High and Intermediate School, with 185 people and 50 pets, was evacuated due to flooding and later relocated. Heavy rainfall, 200 to 300 millimeters overnight on Oahu, 400 millimeters at Kala Peak, saturated the ground after a prior storm dumped 670 millimeters between March 10 to 16, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian Article 1 reports evacuation orders for 4,000 plus people, while Guardian Article 3 later states 5,500 people were under evacuation orders. ABC states Maui County issued an asterisk evacuation advisory asterisk, not warning, for Lahaina, but Guardian Article 3 calls it an asterisk evacuation warning star. Guardian Article 1 mentions a shelter at Waialua High lost power and was evacuated itself, while ABC does not mention power loss at the shelter. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Pauline Hanson's One Nation surge benefiting Labour in Australian elections via electoral system dynamics. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pauline Hanson declared her surge is just the start after One Nation secured 20% of the vote in recent elections. Labour's primary vote remained stable at 39% despite the Conservative split. Liberal Party vote collapsed to 19% in the same election. One Nation surged to 20% while Greens increased to 11% in the same contest. One Nation finished 4th in Metropolitan Adelaide behind Labour, One Nation, and Greens in multiple seats. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 articles as they are nearly identical in content and phrasing. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teen stabs woman in Melbourne shopping centre, police arrest suspect on bail. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 25-year-old woman was stabbed at M-City Shopping Centre, Blackburn Road, Clayton, Melbourne, around 7:30 to 7:50 a.m. on Thursday. A 16-year-old boy was arrested and charged with intentionally causing injury, recklessly causing injury, assaulting with a weapon, and possessing a controlled weapon. The victim was taken to the Alfred Hospital with upper body injuries and remained in a serious but stable condition. A passerby called 000-000 after the stabbing and assisted the victim. The suspect was arrested at a medical center in Clayton shortly after the incident. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC does not mention the suspect being on bail before the attack, while Theej states he was on bail. ABC says the victim was inside the shopping center when stabbed, but Theej says she was walking through it. Theej reports the victim was from Mount Waverley, while ABC does not specify her suburb. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Markwayne Mullin confirmed as DHS Secretary after Senate approval. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Markwayne Mullin was confirmed as the new Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, by the US Senate on a 54-45 vote, with Republicans holding the majority. The Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee advanced Mullin's nomination on a near-party-line vote of 8-1 among Republicans, with Rand Paul voting against. Democrats split 1-6 in favor. Mullin's confirmation hearing included questions about his support for Donald Trump's immigration enforcement policies, including accusations of encouraging violence and comments about a 2017 neighbor assault and a 2023 confrontation with a witness. Mullin expressed regret for calling Alex Pretty, a U.S. citizen killed by immigration agents in Minneapolis, a deranged individual, but did not commit to avoiding immigration enforcement near polling stations during elections. Mullin pledged that DHS would not enter homes or businesses without a judicial warrant, addressing reports that ICE agents had been using administrative warrants. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Mullin's nomination was advanced by the committee on a near-party-line vote with nearly all 8 Republicans voting yes, while Article 2 does not specify the committee vote breakdown beyond Rand Paul's opposition. Article 1 reports Mullin refused to commit to not having immigration agents positioned near polling stations, while Article 2 quotes Mullin saying "I don't understand what the concern about enforcing immigration at polling places is anyways," but does not explicitly state he refused to commit to avoiding it. Article 1 mentions Mullin dodged questions about specific immigration arrests by saying he was not familiar with those cases, while Article 2 does not include this detail. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democrats impeach bid against Attorney General Pam Bondi over Epstein files briefing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Pam Bondi, the U.S. Attorney General, led a closed-door briefing on Jeffrey Epstein files on Wednesday, the 10th of April, 2024, at Capitol Hill. Democrats walked out of the briefing after less than an hour, calling it an outrageous fake hearing due to Bondi's refusal to testify under oath. The House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Bondi earlier this month, with 5 Republicans joining Democrats to demand testimony about the Justice Department's handling of Epstein investigation files. California Congressman Robert Garcia branded the briefing an outrageous fake hearing and accused Bondi of defying subpoenas and being evasive. Florida Congressman Maxwell Alejandro Frost stated outside the hearing room, "We asked her multiple times, 'Are you going to come and speak with us under oath?' She would not say yes." But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 mentions the FBI Director Kash Patel's testimony about buying location data on Americans, but Article 2 does not reference this detail. Article 1 includes multiple unrelated topics: Iran war, Trump's summit cancellation, immigration policies, not covered in Article 2. Article 1 states that Representative Summer Lee is the second Democrat this month to introduce articles of impeachment against Bondi, but Article 2 does not mention this timeline or the second impeachment attempt. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Death of married at first sight expert Mel Schilling from colon cancer. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Mel Schilling died on Tuesday, February 2026, aged 54 from colon cancer that metastasized to her brain. Schilling was diagnosed with colon cancer in December 2023, with a 5 cm tumor removed via surgery. In February 2024, a routine scan revealed small nodules in her lungs indicating metastasis. She underwent 16 rounds of chemotherapy over 2 years before brain metastasis was confirmed in December 2025. Schilling announced her terminal diagnosis in March 2026, stating cancer had spread to her left brain and no further treatment was possible. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC mentioned Schilling was a Channel 4 UK married at first sight expert, but no other sources confirm this specific UK network detail. ABC notes Schilling was eligible for a clinical trial starting March 2026, while other sources only mention her diagnosis in December 2025 and no trial reference. The Guardian describes Schilling as a dating expert on Channel 4, but other sources frame her as a relationship expert or psychologist without Channel 4 specificity. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ICE detains Canadian mother and autistic daughter in Texas immigration facility. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tanya Warner, 47, and her 7-year-old autistic daughter Ayla Lucas are detained by ICE in Texas since the 14th of March, 2025. Both are Canadian citizens. Warner moved to the US in 2021 after marrying Edward Warner, a US citizen, and lives in Kingsville, Texas. They were stopped at a Border Patrol checkpoint in Sarita, Texas, on the 14th of March while driving home from a baby shower in Raymondville. ICE agents took Tanya Warner and Ayla Lucas for fingerprinting at the checkpoint. Neither returned after initial processing. They were initially held at Rio Grande Valley Central Processing Center in McAllen, Texas, then transferred to Dilley Immigration Processing Center in South Texas. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the family was held at Rio Grande Valley Central Processing Center initially, while Article 2 confirms this but adds they were moved to Dilley early Friday, no date specified in Article 1. Article 1 does not mention handcuffing children at the checkpoint, while Article 2 states both Tanya Warner and Ayla were handcuffed for 5.5 hours. Article 1 does not mention ICE agents pressuring Warner to sign self-deportation documents, while Article 2 explicitly states this occurred. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian property market profitability trends in late 2025 with regional and dwelling type variations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 95.9% of Australian properties sold in the December 2025 quarter made a profit, up from 95.6% in September 2025, the highest since March 2005, Totality Pain and Gain report. The median profit gain for December 2025 was a record $365,000 per property. Nationally, 98.1% of houses sold at a profit compared to 92.1% of units in the December 2025 quarter. Melbourne City of Melbourne recorded 45.9% of unit sales resulting in losses, with Stonington and Port Phillip also exceeding 25% loss-making sales. In Sydney, Parramatta had 23.9% of sellers losing money, while Ryde and Strathfield exceeded 20% loss-making sales. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrests and investigation into alleged Sydney kidnapping and murder of Chris Bagsarian. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chris Bagsarian, an 85-year-old grandfather, was allegedly kidnapped from his North Ryde home on the 13th of February in a case of mistaken identity. Bagsarian's body was found near a golf club in Pitt Town on the 24th of February, 11 days after his disappearance. Two men, Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were charged in February with murder and kidnapping with intent to ransom or cause grievous bodily harm. A man and woman, both aged 23, were arrested on the 21st of March during a search warrant execution in Seven Hills, Sydney. The 23-year-old man was charged with murder, kidnapping with intent to ransom, and multiple firearms drug offences. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not mention the seizure of firearms or drugs during the search, while News Corp Australia details extensive weapons and drug evidence found. ABC describes the case as involving videos and images allegedly showing Bagsarian being tortured, but this detail is not mentioned in The Guardian or News Corp Australia. News Corp Australia states the man was charged with 3 counts of drug supply, less than indictable and commercial quantity, while The Guardian and ABC do not specify drug charges beyond general allegations. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Rising national security anxiety among Australians amid perceived threats and government preparedness concerns. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian National University's National Security College conducted surveys between November 2024 and February 2026 involving over 20,000 Australians, with additional focus groups and interviews. 69% of Australians polled in July 2025 believed Australia would likely or almost certainly be involved in a foreign military conflict within 5 years. 45% of Australians considered a foreign military attack on Australian soil likely, very likely, or almost certain within 5 years, July 2025 data. Worry about national security rose sharply among 18 to 24-year-olds, from 22% in November 2024 to 55% in February 2026. 72% of respondents rated domestic terrorism as a serious concern in February 2026, up from 55% in November 2024, following the Bondi attack. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions 69% of respondents in July 2025 considered Australia's involvement in a foreign military conflict likely, while ABC states 70% expect such involvement. The Guardian reports 45% of Australians considered a foreign military attack likely in July 2025, but ABC does not specify the exact percentage for that exact time frame. The Guardian notes 85% or more respondents believed multiple threats likely, while ABC states more than 3/4 considered economic shocks and cyber attacks likely. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Dietary factors and genetic influences on dementia prevention and brain health. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The MIND diet, Mediterranean-diet intervention for neurodegenerative delay, is linked to lower risk of Alzheimer's disease and dementia, with strong evidence supporting its neuroprotective benefits. A 2024 Lancet Commission report identified 14 modifiable risk factors that could prevent or delay 45% of dementia cases, including high LDL cholesterol, 7%, untreated vision loss, 2%, hearing loss, 7%, depression, 3%, and low social contact in old age, 5%. The MIND diet was associated with a 19% reduced odds of developing mild cognitive impairment or dementia in a 2019 study led by Scientia professor Karin Arnsti at UNSW's Aging Futures Institute. The APOE4 gene variant, present in about 1 in 4 people, increases dementia risk and was studied in relation to unprocessed meat consumption and cognitive decline. The MIND diet emphasizes leafy greens, nuts, berries, olive oil, and oily fish, while limiting red meat to fewer than 4 servings per week. But not all outlets told the same story. Both sources repeat identical text verbatim, with no actual contradictions between them. No conflicting information was found between the two articles as they are nearly identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Top 25 must-visit experiences and destinations in Asia for Australian travellers. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Asia has 48 countries according to the United Nations, extending from the Indian subcontinent to Central Asia and the Middle East. Indonesia ranked as Australia's top visited destination in Asia last year, driven by Bali's popularity. Japan ranked 3rd, China 5th, and Thailand 6th among Australia's top 10 most visited Asian destinations in 2023. Vietnam and Sri Lanka are among Asia's fastest-growing destinations for Australian tourists. Australia's direct non-stop flight to the Maldives from Melbourne was launched by Luxury Escapes. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government appoints former police officer Darren Robinson to Legal Aid Board amid Palm Island controversy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Darren Robinson was a former Queensland Police Service officer, senior sergeant, who investigated a 2003 complaint against Christopher Hurley, ruling it fictitious. A 2005 coronial inquest described Robinson's investigation as superficial, biased and misleading, and his conclusion as dishonest and flew in the face of objective evidence. The Crime and Misconduct Commission recommended Robinson be disciplined alongside 3 other officers in 2015 for his conduct during Palm Island events. Robinson was part of a police team sent to Palm Island in 2004 to investigate the death in custody of Mulrunji Dumaji and participated in subsequent raids with tactical police. Robinson was admitted to practice as a solicitor in 2014 and now works as a lawyer in Townsville. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Robinson was appointed as part of a team of police sent to Palm Island to investigate Dumaji's death, while Article 2 clarifies he was a friend of Christopher Hurley and investigated a prior complaint against him. Article 1 quotes Education Minister Langbroek rejecting the finding that Robinson was dishonest, while Article 2 provides detailed court findings describing Robinson's conduct as dishonest and harassment. Article 1 does not mention Justice Mortimer's 2015 findings about Robinson's role in conveying speculative suspicions to police, which Article 2 includes. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iranian women's football team returns home after asylum drama in Australia amid war fears. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 7 members of Iran's women's national football team initially sought asylum in Australia on March 10, 2024, after the team's silence during the national anthem at the Women's Asian Cup. 5 players and 1 staff member later withdrew their asylum claims and returned to Iran via Malaysia, Oman, and Turkey, arriving in early April 2024. 2 players, Fatma Pasandadeh and Atfef Ramazanisadeh, remained in Australia and are training with Brisbane Roar without hijabs. Iranian state media reported the team was greeted at the border by officials and later held a welcome ceremony in Valia Square, Tehran. Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf stated the players disappointed the enemies and did not surrender to deception in a social media post. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the team arrived in Australia for the tournament shortly before Iran's war began on February 28, while The Guardian and News.com.au do not specify this exact timing. The Guardian reports Iranian authorities accused Australia of pressuring the players to stay, but ABC does not mention this direct accusation from Iran. News.com.au claims Iranian state media filmed the players parading over the Israeli flag with floral wreaths, a detail not mentioned in ABC or The Guardian. This story was covered by ABC News, The The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US military spending on Iran war and its budgetary implications vs public health science funding. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US spent $11.3 billion on munitions in the first 6 days of the Iran war, 28 the 5th of February March 2026, per Pentagon reports to lawmakers, Articles 1, 2, 3. The war cost $12.7 billion by day 6, according to the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, Articles 2, 3. The $11.3 billion figure excludes costs like force deployment, medical expenses, and infrastructure repairs, Articles 1, 2. The Environmental Protection Agency's 2026 budget is $8.8 billion, the CDC's is $9.2 billion, and the National Cancer Institute's is $7.4 billion, Articles 1, 3. The National Science Foundation's total federal scientific research funding for 2026 is less than $11.3 billion, Articles 1, 3. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the $11.3 billion figure does not include deployment costs, while Article 2 clarifies CSIS estimates do include force buildup and medical expenses beyond munitions. Article 1 and 3 cite the $11.3 billion as the Pentagon's figure, but Article 2 notes the Pentagon's estimate was limited to munitions and not the full cost. Article 2 claims the true cost exceeded $18 billion by day 6, while Articles 1 and 3 only confirm $11.3 to $12.7 billion as verified figures, with $18 billion as an estimate. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government's 2032 Brisbane Olympics rowing venue controversy at Rockhampton's Fitzroy River. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rockhampton's Fitzroy River is the sole venue under consideration for Olympic rowing and canoeing at the 2032 Brisbane Games, with no alternative sites in contention according to Deputy Premier Jared Bleegey, ABC, Newscomau. World Rowing President Jean-Christophe Roland and ICF President Thomas Konietzko publicly backed the Fitzroy River venue in February 2024, stating they remain committed to ensuring fair and safe competition, ABC, Newscomau. The Games Independent Infrastructure and Coordination Authority, JICA, is conducting a feasibility study and technical assessment of the Fitzroy River, including river flow, water levels, wind conditions, and field of play options, Newscomau, ABC. The preferred field of play for the Fitzroy River is a 2-kilometre competition course with a southern finish line downstream toward the Fitzroy Barrage, Newscomau, ABC. The total budget for Olympic venues and legacy infrastructure in Queensland is $7.1 billion, as renegotiated by state and federal governments in July 2023, ABC, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, states the Fitzroy River rowing course has passed initial testing but requires widening and dredging, while Article 2, Newscomau, claims the preferred field of play will not require dramatic driven changes and is contained within the $7.1 billion budget without mentioning widening or dredging costs. Article 1, ABC, reports that Moreton Bay Mayor Peter Flannery and Rowing Queensland CEO Anthea O'Loughlin have backed the City of Moreton Bay's proposed flatwater rowing precinct, but Article 2, Newscomau, and Article 3, ABC, do not mention this alternative venue being considered further by the government. Article 1, ABC, states that World Rowing and ICF have not yet signed off on the Rockhampton venue, while Article 3, ABC, reports that they have publicly backed the venue and are committed to ongoing technical assessments. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Homicide investigation and manslaughter charge in Perth's Banksia Grove over a woman's death. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 42-year-old woman was found unresponsive at a home in Banksia Grove, Perth's northern suburbs, on Thursday morning around 9 a.m. The woman was declared dead at the scene by paramedics after attempts to revive her. The incident occurred on Mayerlee Bend, Banksia Grove. A man in his 40s was assisting police with inquiries, Article 1, and later charged, Article 2. Homicide detectives are investigating the death. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states a man in his 40s is assisting police, while Article 2 specifies a 47-year-old man was arrested and charged. Article 1 does not mention charges or an arrest, while Article 2 reports a charge of manslaughter and an upcoming court appearance. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Rising fuel prices drive surge in Australian EV interest and sales amid geopolitical tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Electric vehicle sales in Australia reached 11.8% of total new car sales in February 2024, marking a record monthly market share, ABC, Guardian. Crude oil prices exceeded $100 per barrel and are predicted to surpass $150 due to the Iran war and Strait of Hormuz blockade, ABC, Guardian. Chinese automakers, BYD, GWM, Chery, Milligram, rank among Australia's top 10 new car sellers, with BYD at 6th and GWM at 7th, ABC, Guardian. Australia's EV adoption remains low at around 2% of all cars on the road, with 2025 sales projected at 8.3%, ABC. Unleaded petrol prices reached approximately $2.50 per litre and diesel approached $3 per litre in 2024, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports EV sales grew by 11.8% in February 2024, while Guardian states EV market share climbed to about 13% of new purchases, likely referring to cumulative growth versus monthly share. ABC cites FCAI's 2025 electron volt sales projection at 8.3%, but Guardian does not mention this specific figure or timeline. ABC states overall EV uptake in Australia is around 2% of all cars on the road, while Guardian does not provide this exact percentage but focuses on new purchases. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Trump orders ICE agents to US airports amid DHS funding shutdown and TSA staff shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump announced plans to deploy ICE agents to US airports starting Monday to assist with security due to long lines caused by a partial government shutdown. The partial government shutdown began on February 14, 2026, and has lasted 36 days as of March 2026. More than 400 TSA agents have quit their jobs since the shutdown began, according to NBC News and DHS. TSA agents have been working without pay since February 14, 2026, due to the shutdown. ICE agents are not trained for airport security, which is TSA's domain, and their deployment was criticized by Democrats. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reported Trump's original post included the phrase immediate arrest of all illegal immigrants, but ABC did not mention this specific detail in their coverage. The Guardian highlighted Trump's focus on Somali immigrants and his past xenophobic rhetoric, while ABC did not emphasize this aspect of the story. The Guardian mentioned that ICE's authority to arrest non-US citizens at airports is disputed, referencing USC 1357, but ABC did not address this legal ambiguity. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran conflict escalation and its economic political fallout for Trump ahead of midterms. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Petrol prices in the US have risen by more than 80 cents per gallon since the start of the Iran conflict. The Trump administration coordinated the largest ever release of emergency oil stocks, 400 million barrels, with the Group of 7 and International Energy Agency's 32 member countries. Over a quarter of the 400 million barrels came from the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which consists of 60-plus underground salt caverns along the U.S. Gulf Coast. Before the release, the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve was at 60% capacity, 700 million barrels total, and is now down to 45% capacity. Brent crude oil price exceeded $104 per barrel as the Strait of Hormuz remained closed for the first time in modern history. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources as they are identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia approves massive coal seam gas expansion in Queensland until 2081. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government approved a coal seam gas expansion project, Australia Pacific LNG, in Queensland's Surrott and Bowen basins until 2081. The project includes up to 1,695 new gas wells, 1,545 kilometers of gas and water pipelines, and 3 processing facilities. The project is expected to produce about 2,033 petajoules of gas and operate until 2061, with an extension to 2081 for environmental compliance. The project's public environment report estimated 9 tons of CO2 emissions during construction and operation, plus 111 tons from burning the gas. Australia Pacific LNG is a joint venture of ConocoPhillips, Origin Energy, and Sinopec. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 126 environmental conditions, while ABC states over 120 conditions, no exact number. The Guardian mentions 111 tons of CO2 from burning gas, but ABC does not specify this exact figure. The Guardian highlights the project's lifetime emissions as 120 tons, while ABC focuses on construction operation emissions separately, 9 tons. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Testing and reviewing chef's knives for home cooks and professional chefs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ben Lippitt tested 14 knives over a fortnight for The Guardian, focusing on tasks like dicing shallots, slicing tomatoes, and chopping herbs. The Wusthof Classic Chef Knife, 20 centimeters, was named the best overall chef's knife by Ben Lippitt in both articles. Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife, 20 centimeters, was selected as the best budget knife, priced at £43. Helen Simmons, a knife specialist, advised against using knives on stones, bones, frozen food, or hard surfaces like steel or glass. Ben Lippitt recommended avoiding dishwashers for knives, emphasizing hand cleaning and proper storage, e.g., magnetic racks or boxes. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Victorinox Fibrox Chef's Knife was the best budget knife and priced at £43, but Article 2 does not mention the price explicitly. Article 1 details specific knife lengths, e.g., Sabatier 25 cm, Robert Welsh 14 cm, Blenheim Forge 17.5 cm, and styles, while Article 2 omits these specifics entirely. Article 1 emphasizes the importance of blade geometry, Western versus Japanese, and handle fit, but Article 2 does not discuss these factors in depth. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Olympian Rohan Dennis social media post about a Porsche car after his wife's fatal accident. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Olympic cyclist Rohan Dennis was given a 17-month suspended prison sentence in May 2024 for an aggravated act likely to cause harm after his wife Melissa Hoskins died in December 2023 when she was struck by his car near their Medindi, Adelaide home. Dennis pleaded guilty to the charge and was placed on a 2-year good behavior bond with a $100 fine. His driver's license was suspended for 5 years. Melissa Hoskins, an Olympic and world champion cyclist, died after jumping onto the bonnet of Dennis's Volkswagen Amarok, not the Porsche, during an argument about a kitchen renovation, she was dragged under the car and killed. Dennis posted a photo of a black Porsche on Instagram on December 2024 with the caption, "What an absolute weapon." South Australia's Victims' Rights Commissioner Sarah Quick called the Porsche post deeply offensive and said it demonstrated a profound lack of respect for Melissa and her family. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian says Dennis was sentenced in May 2023, but news.com.au and ABC say it was May 2024. The Guardian states Hoskins opened the car door, which Dennis closed without stopping before she fell, while ABC and news.com.au do not mention this detail. The Guardian reports Dennis deleted his entire Instagram account, but ABC only states he posted additional content before, no mention of deletion. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Qantas Jetstar reduces NZ flights due to rising jet fuel prices amid global fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jetstar is reducing 12% of services on some flights between Auckland and Sydney, and Auckland and Brisbane, starting May. Jetstar cited rising jet fuel prices as the reason for flight reductions, directly linked to the Middle East conflict. Air New Zealand also reduced flights earlier this month, March 16 to May 3, cutting 5% of its total domestic and international schedule, mainly in lower demand or off-peak times. Vietnam Airlines plans to cancel more than 20 domestic flights weekly starting next month due to looming jet fuel shortages. Australia's fuel crisis includes 8% of service stations nationwide without one or more grades of fuel, 560 stations affected as of reporting. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Jetstar's 12% reduction applies to some flights between Auckland, Sydney and Auckland Brisbane, while Newscomau specifies over 55 flights have been cut from these routes and Sydney Air Queenstown, via Melbourne. Newscomau reports 8% of Australian service stations, 560, lack fuel, but ABC does not provide a specific national percentage or total stations affected. ABC mentions Air New Zealand's 5% reduction as unprecedented volatility in jet fuel prices, while Newscomau does not repeat this specific phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish ambulances in London treated as anti-Semitic hate crime. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 4 ambulances belonging to Hatzola Northwest, a Jewish community ambulance service, were set on fire in Golders Green, London, on Monday around 1:45 a.m. local time. The incident occurred near the Matchsyke Hadath Synagogue on Highfield Road, Golders Green. Explosions were caused by oxygen cylinders on the ambulances, breaking windows in an adjacent block of flats. No injuries were reported, but nearby houses were evacuated as a precaution. Police are treating the incident as an anti-Semitic hate crime and counter-terrorism officers are leading the investigation. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, reports 2 men were arrested on Wednesday morning, while ABC, Article 3, does not specify the exact time of arrests but confirms they occurred on Wednesday. Newscomau claims 3 suspects remain at large, but The Guardian, Article 1, states police are searching for all those involved, with no explicit confirmation of 3 suspects remaining at large. ABC, Article 4, states footage posted on social media appears to show 3 hooded people pouring gasoline on the vehicles, but The Guardian does not reference social media footage specifically. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian PM Albanese and Home Affairs Minister Burke heckled at Lokemba Mosque during Eid prayers. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese and Tony Burke attended Lokemba Mosque in Sydney's West on Friday morning for Eid celebrations marking the end of Ramadan. Protesters at the mosque shouted phrases including genocide supporters, disgrace, shame, and get them out of here during the event. A 33-year-old man, later identified as Mukhlis Mr., was removed from the mosque by police after a disturbance and given a move-on direction. Lebanese Muslim Association Secretary Gamal Kir delivered a statement defending the invitation of Albanese and Burke, calling engagement with government not a betrayal of Gaza-Lebanon concerns. Israel's strikes in Lebanon have killed at least 912 people, including 111 children, and wounded 2,221 others, per Lebanese Health Ministry. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Albanese was led out by police after being booed, while ABC and SMH describe him being escorted out or rushed into the mosque's office by organizers. SMH claims a 29-year-old protester named Ibrahim Seklawi was the main heckler, but News Corp Australia identifies Mukhlis Mr., 33, as the man thrown out by police. The Guardian states the man was released without charge, while News Corp Australia reports he was thrown down the stairs and given a move-on direction, no charge implied but more force used. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Childcare worker convicted of indecent treatment of child, acquitted of rape charges in Queensland. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Avinder Singh, 43, a Fiji citizen, was accused of digitally raping a child at a Queensland childcare centre in 2022. Singh pleaded not guilty to charges of rape and indecent treatment of a child under his care. The trial took place at Maroochydore District Court on the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, in February 2026. The jury found Singh not guilty of rape but guilty of one count of indecent treatment of a child under his care. Singh was sentenced to 20 months in jail, with half, 10 months, suspended before deportation to Fiji. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the family had been in limbo for 4 years, but ABC does not specify the duration of the legal process. News Kamau reports the father used the phrase "I'd get lower if I didn't pay my taxes," which is not mentioned in ABC articles. ABC describes the victim's parent as tears falling, hands shaking during testimony, while News Kamau does not detail emotional reactions. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.